In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Yet within this endless ocean of conflict, bloodshed, and desperation, there exist islands of unimaginable wealth and luxury that would make the most decadent emperors of ancient terror seem like paupers by comparison. While trillions upon trillions of souls toil in the darkness of hive cities, labor in toxic manufactorums, or die screaming on distant battlefields, a select few live in opulence that defies comprehension. These are not merely the wealthy. They are not simply rich in the way we might understand the term. They are beings who command the resources of entire star systems, whose personal fortunes could fund wars that span centuries, whose morning decisions determine whether whole populations live or die. They dwell in palaces that dwarf mountains, command fleets that blot out stars, and wield influence that reaches across the galaxy itself. To understand wealth in the 41st millennium is to understand something fundamentally different from what we know. In the Imperium of man, money as we conceive it becomes almost meaningless at the highest levels. When you can requisition entire planetary outputs with a single seal, when your family name opens vaults that have held treasures for 10,000 years, when your word can redirect the course of Imperial Navy battle groups, the concept of currency dissolves into something far more abstract and terrifying. These individuals exist in a realm beyond ordinary human experience. While a hive worker might live and die without ever seeing natural sunlight, without ever tasting real food, without ever experiencing a moment free from the grinding poverty that defines their existence, the truly wealthy of the Imperium experience realities so removed from this baseline that they might as well be living in entirely different universes. And in many ways, they are. The wealth of these individuals is not simply about personal comfort, though they certainly enjoy luxuries beyond imagining. It is about power in its most raw and concentrated form. It is about the ability to shape the course of human history, to decide the fates of billions with a casual word, to access technologies and resources that most of humanity does not even know exist. It is about living as demigods in a universe where gods walk among mortals. This is the world of the rogue traders, whose hereditary warrants grant them freedoms that even planetary governors cannot claim. This is the realm of the navigator houses, whose mutant bloodlines are worth more than entire sectors. This is the domain of Forge World Archmagos, who control industrial complexes the size of continents, of cardinal worlds where faith is currency, and souls are the only coin that matters. This is where the High Lords of Terror make decisions that ripple across 1,000,000 worlds, where Inquisitor Lords command resources that could topple civilizations. The truly wealthy of the Imperium do not merely possess riches. They embody a fundamental truth of the 41st millennium, that power and wealth are so concentrated at the top that the gap between the rulers and the ruled has become a chasm so vast it cannot be crossed, cannot even be properly perceived from below. When you stand in the depths of an underhive, you cannot see the spires that pierce the clouds above. You cannot comprehend the distance. You cannot imagine what exists in those impossible heights. But we can try. We can peer into those rarefied altitudes and attempt to understand what it truly means to be among the wealthiest beings in the galaxy. We can explore the lives of those who have transcended mere mortality to become forces of nature unto themselves, whose existences are defined by excess on a scale that beggars belief. Rogue traders, the merchant princes of the void. Among all the wealthy elite of the Imperium, perhaps none enjoy such unique privilege and power as the rogue traders. These are not simply successful merchants or canny business people. They are dynasties unto themselves, families whose hereditary right to explore, exploit, and conquer beyond the boundaries of the Imperium is literally written in documents signed by the Emperor himself during the Great Crusade, or granted by the High Lords of Terror in his name. A rogue trader holds what is called a warrant of trade, and this is not merely a business license. This is a document of such profound legal and historical significance that it grants its bearer freedoms and authorities that supersede almost all other imperial law. With this warrant, a rogue trader can travel beyond the Astronomican's light, into regions of space where the Imperium's laws do not reach. They can negotiate with xenospecies that it would be heresy for any other human to even acknowledge. They can claim entire worlds for the Imperium or for themselves. They can build private armies, command fleets, and establish trade monopolies that span sectors. But the true measure of a rogue trader's wealth is not found in any ledger or vault. It is measured in something called profit factor, and this concept itself reveals the staggering scale of their fortunes. Profit factor is an abstraction because ordinary currency becomes meaningless when discussing the resources these dynasties control. When your personal fortune includes entire fleets of merchant vessels, when you own mining operations on dozens of worlds, when your trade contacts span the galaxy and your warehouses could supply entire crusades, counting individual thrones becomes a pointless exercise. The poorest rogue trader, one who possesses perhaps only a single ancient and barely functional vessel, still commands wealth that would be considered princely by planetary standards. But the truly successful dynasties, those that have thrived for centuries or even millennia, control resources on a scale that defies easy comprehension. They own not just ships, but entire shipyards, not just trade, agreements, but monopolies on the movement of goods across multiple sectors. Not just wealth, but the infrastructure that generates wealth on an industrial scale. Consider the flagship of a major rogue trader dynasty. This is not a ship in any conventional sense. It is a mobile city, a kilometers-long construct that houses tens of thousands of souls, carries weapons that could level continents, and contains cargo holds vast enough to transport the entire economic output of a civilized world. The ship itself might be thousands of years old, a relic from the dark age of technology or the Great Crusade, maintained at astronomical expense and worth more than entire planetary systems. These vessels are palaces in their own right. The rogue trader's personal quarters aboard such a ship would occupy entire decks, fitted with luxuries imported from across the galaxy. Walls of polished wood from Deathworld forests, floors of marble quarried on shrine worlds, artwork that includes original, illuminated manuscripts from the age of the Emperor, relics and treasures whose value cannot be calculated because they are literally irreplaceable. Some rogue traders maintain gardens aboard their ships, biodomes that simulate the environments of lost paradise worlds, where exotic plants from 1,000 different ecosystems grow in carefully controlled conditions. The rogue trader themselves dresses in finery that represents wealth on a scale most humans cannot conceptualize. Their clothing is not merely expensive fabric. It might incorporate thread of gold spun from auric dust, mined from the rings of Saturnian moons. It might feature buttons carved from the bones of extinct xenos species, set with gems the size of thumbnails, each one worth more than an entire hive gang member will see in a lifetime. Their jewelry is not ornamentation, but statement pieces. Each item a work of art that took master craftsmen years to create, some pieces being hundreds or thousands of years old, heirlooms passed down through generations. But more than clothing or personal adornment, the rogue trader's true wealth is displayed in their equipment. They carry personal weapons that represent the pinnacle of imperial and sometimes even alien technology. An Archaeotech plasma pistol whose like has not been manufactured in millennia. A power sword whose blade was forged in the depths of a dying star and whose molecular edge could cut through tank armor. Digital weapons hidden in rings and other jewelry. Tiny but devastatingly effective implements of death. Many wear suits of artificer armor custom made for their frames. Armor that rivals what Space Marines wear in both protection and magnificence. The retinue of a rogue trader further demonstrates their wealth. These are not merely servants or employees. They are specialists in their fields, individuals whose skills and abilities would make them valuable anywhere in the Imperium, but who choose to serve the rogue trader because the opportunities and rewards are beyond what they could find elsewhere. A senior navigator from one of the great houses, a rogue tech priest who has access to forbidden knowledge, a sanctioned psyker of considerable power, master-at-arms, who have trained with the best fighting instructors in the Imperium. Each of these individuals represents a significant investment, and a major rogue trader might have dozens or even hundreds of such specialists in their employ. The lifestyle of a successful rogue trader is one of constant adventure mixed with unbelievable luxury. They might spend months traveling through the void, exploring uncharted regions of space where no human has ventured in millennia. During these journeys, they live aboard their ships in conditions that, while confined by the nature of void travel, still represent luxury beyond what most Imperial citizens will ever know. When they make planetfall, whether on Imperial worlds or beyond, they are treated as dignitaries of the highest order because that is exactly what they are. A rogue trader arriving at an Imperial world is an event of significance. Planetary governors extend invitations to their palaces. Local nobility compete for their attention and favor. The possibility of establishing a trade relationship with a rogue trader dynasty can transform a world's economic future, and everyone knows it. The rogue trader holds court, negotiates deals, and moves through layers of society that most people will never access, all while accumulating more wealth and influence. When a rogue trader returns to their primary holdings, whether that is a personal estate on a civilized world, a private void station, or an entire world that they own outright, they enter domains that truly showcase the scale of their wealth. Some rogue trader dynasties have accumulated so much treasure over centuries that they maintain private museums whose collections would be the envy of any planetary government. Xenos artifacts that the Inquisition would normally seize and destroy, ancient human technologies that the Adeptus Mechanicus would kill to study, artworks and relics from 1,000 different cultures. The estates themselves are monuments to excess. A rogue trader's personal palace might occupy hundreds of square kilometers, staffed by thousands of servants, guards, and functionaries. The architecture is deliberately grandiose, designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. Halls large enough to host entire noble courts. Libraries containing books and data slates from across the galaxy, many of them unique copies of works that exist nowhere else. Treasuries whose contents would fund small wars. Training halls where the rogue trader's private army drills in preparation for whatever conflicts lie ahead. And make no mistake, rogue traders maintain private armies. These are not simple security forces or bodyguard details. These are professional military formations, sometimes numbering in the thousands or tens of thousands, equipped with military-grade weapons and vehicles. Some rogue traders have established pacts with Space Marine chapters, allowing them to request Astartes' assistance in particularly dire circumstances. Others maintain standing agreements with Imperial Guard regiments or even entire Titan legions. The cost of maintaining such forces would bankrupt entire planetary governments, but for a major rogue trader dynasty, it is simply the cost of doing business. The truly successful rogue trader dynasties do not operate single ships or even small fleets. They command armadas, dozens or even hundreds of vessels, from massive capital ships to swift raiders to humble but numerous cargo haulers. These fleets represent mobile wealth on a staggering scale. Each ship requires crew, maintenance, and supplies. Each ship generates income through trade and exploration. The logistics of managing such a fleet would overwhelm most organizations, but rogue trader dynasties have centuries or millennia of experience in these matters. Some rogue traders have gone beyond merely owning ships and have established their own shipyards and manufacturing facilities. They have claimed resource-rich systems in the void beyond the Imperium's borders and set up mining operations that feed their own industrial complexes. They have negotiated exclusive trade deals with entire sectors, giving them monopolies on the movement of critical goods. The most successful have essentially become sovereign powers in their own right, ruling over domains that might include multiple star systems, billions of subjects, and resources that rival those of subsector governors. The food a rogue trader eats is itself a display of wealth. While hive workers survive on corpse starch and recycled nutrients, while common soldiers eat ration bars manufactured in bulk, a rogue trader's table features delicacies from across the galaxy, fruits from agri-worlds where each piece is cultivated by hand, meats from animals that exist on only one planet in the Imperium, spices worth their weight in gold, wines aged for centuries in the holds of void-going vessels, the vibrations of warp travel somehow improving their flavor in ways that cannot be replicated planet-side. Their daily routines involve making decisions that affect thousands or millions of lives. A choice to establish a new trade route might bring prosperity to an entire world. A decision to support one faction over another in a local political dispute might determine the outcome of conflicts that last for years. An order to explore a particular region of space might lead to the discovery of lost human civilizations or valuable resources, or it might send hundreds to their deaths in the void. The weight of these decisions would crush lesser individuals, but rogue traders are raised from birth to understand that they exist on a different level than ordinary humanity. And yet, for all their wealth and power, rogue traders live dangerous lives. The void is not kind to the unwary, and the regions beyond the Imperium's light are filled with horrors that would shatter the minds of lesser beings. Pirates and raiders stalk the trade routes. Xenos empires view human traders as either potential partners or prey. The forces of chaos wait to corrupt the unwary. Other rogue trader dynasties compete for the same opportunities, and that competition can turn deadly. A rogue trader must be warrior, diplomat, merchant, and explorer all at once, possessing the skills and will to survive and thrive in an environment where failure means death. This combination of immense wealth, tremendous freedom, and constant danger creates a unique culture among the rogue trader dynasties. They are supremely confident, having been raised to believe that they are among the elite of the Imperium, which they are. They are fiercely independent, cherishing the freedoms granted by their warrants more than perhaps any amount of wealth. They are cunning and pragmatic, having learned that survival in the void requires flexibility and the willingness to make hard choices. And they are absolutely committed to their dynasty's continuation and prosperity because their warrants are hereditary, passed from parent to child across the generations. The legacy of a rogue trader dynasty is measured not in years, but in millennia. Some families have held their warrants since the Great Crusade, their founders having received them directly from the Emperor's hand. These ancient dynasties possess histories that intertwine with the Imperium's own development, and their archives contain records that would be invaluable to any historian. They have seen the rise and fall of subsectors. They have witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations. Through it all, they have endured, adapted, and prospered. Imperial nobility, planetary governors, and sector lords. While rogue traders operate on the fringes of the Imperium with tremendous freedom, the planetary governors and sector lords represent a different kind of wealth and power. These are the individuals who directly rule worlds and systems in the Emperor's name, and their wealth is tied intrinsically to the vast territories under their control. A planetary governor is not merely an administrator. They are the absolute ruler of their world, wielding powers that in any earlier era would have marked them as kings or emperors. Every decision regarding their planet flows through their office. They determine tax rates, impose laws, direct development, and control the planetary defense forces. As long as they meet their imperial tithe, maintain order, and prevent heresy from taking root, they are free to rule as they see fit. This combination of near absolute authority with practical independence creates opportunities for wealth accumulation on a truly staggering scale. The wealth of a planetary governor varies enormously depending on the world they rule. A governor of a sparsely populated frontier world might live well by local standards, but possess relatively modest means by imperial standards. But a governor of a major hive world, a prosperous agri-world, or a strategically important forge world commands resources that dwarf the fortunes of all but the most successful rogue traders. Consider a hive world governor. These massive urban planets house billions or even hundreds of billions of souls packed into towering arcologies that reach kilometers into the sky and delve even deeper into the planet's crust. The governor of such a world collects taxes from this enormous population, oversees industrial production that might supply entire subsectors, and controls the flow of resources into and out of the hives. The sheer scale of economic activity on a major hive world means that even a tiny percentage taken as the governor's due translates into wealth beyond imagining. The governor's palace on such a world is typically located at the very pinnacle of the primary hive, in the spire where the air is actually breathable without rebreathers and where sunlight still reaches. This is not merely a residence, but a sprawling complex that might occupy entire levels of the hive structure. The palace serves as both home and seat of government, housing not just the governor and their family, but thousands of courtiers, advisors, servants, and functionaries who help administer the world. The architecture of these palaces is deliberately designed to awe and intimidate. Halls with ceilings that soar dozens of meters overhead, supported by pillars carved from single pieces of rare stone. Floors of polished marble imported from worlds thousands of light years distant. Windows of actual transparent crystal, not the cheap plastic that most citizens know, offering views across the hive cityscape below. Artwork decorating every surface, from ancient frescoes to modern hololithic displays that shift and change with the light. The governor themselves lives in luxury that represents the absolute pinnacle of what their world can provide. Their personal quarters might occupy an entire wing of the palace, with separate chambers for sleeping, dining, entertainment, and conducting private business. Each room is appointed with furniture and decorations that represent years or decades of skilled craftsmen's work. Beds with mattresses stuffed with materials so rare and exotic that most citizens have never heard of them. Bathing facilities that use actual water, not recycled chemical cleaners, water that might be purified to a degree that makes it cleaner than anything most people will drink in their lifetimes. The governor's wardrobe represents another level of wealth entirely. Clothing made from fabrics that require months to weave, dyed with pigments derived from organisms found on only a handful of worlds. Each outfit might cost more than an entire family in the underhive earns in a generation. Jewelry featuring gems whose like has not been mined in centuries, set in precious metals by master craftsmen. Some governors maintain entire wardrobes that they cycle through, never wearing the same ensemble twice in a year. Food and drink for a planetary governor represents another dimension of their wealth. While the masses below subsist on whatever processed nutrients the hive's manufactorums produce, the governor's table features delicacies that most people cannot even imagine. Fresh fruits and vegetables grown in specialized hydroponic gardens maintained specifically for the palace. Meats from animals raised in controlled environments, each one costing more to produce than feeding 100 hive workers for a year. Ancient wines stored in cellars that have maintained perfect temperature and humidity for centuries. Every meal is an act of conspicuous consumption, a demonstration of the governor's ability to command resources that others cannot access. But the truly impressive aspect of a planetary governor's wealth is not what they consume personally, but what they control institutionally. A major hive world governor oversees an Adeptus Arbites force, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, maintains planetary defense forces that might include millions of soldiers, and directs industrial production that generates everything from basic tools to sophisticated military hardware. They collect tithes from billions of citizens and direct portions of those tithes to various imperial organizations, while retaining significant amounts for planetary use, which in practice often means for the governor's own purposes. Some planetary governors have ruled for decades or even centuries, their lives extended through juvenat treatments and augmetic replacements that keep death at bay far longer than natural human lifespans would allow. These ancient rulers have had generations to accumulate wealth, establish networks of loyal followers, and consolidate their power. Their palaces house treasuries whose contents have been building for longer than most citizens have been alive. Gold and silver measured in tons. Gems and precious stones stored in vaults that require multiple levels of security to access. Ancient artifacts and relics from their world's history, items that have cultural or historical value far beyond any monetary worth. Sector governors operate on an even more rarefied level. These individuals do not merely rule a single world, but oversee entire sectors, regions of space that might contain dozens or even hundreds of inhabited systems. A sector governor is one of the most powerful individuals in the Imperium, below the High Lords themselves, commanding resources on a scale that can influence the course of wars and the fates of billions. The seat of a sector governor is typically a capital world, chosen for its strategic or historical importance. The Lucid Palace on Scintilla in the Calixis sector is one such example, a structure so vast and elaborate that it serves as both governmental, complex, and monument to imperial power. From this seat, the sector governor coordinates the activities of all the planetary governors within their domain, directs the sector's contribution to imperial tithes, and maintains diplomatic relations with the various imperial organizations operating in the region. A sector governor's wealth is not merely personal, but represents the accumulated resources of their entire domain. They can direct the output of multiple forge worlds, commandeer the services of entire imperial guard regiments, and influence the activities of the Inquisition, Ecclesiarchy, and Adeptus Mechanicus operating in their sector. While they do not own these resources in the same way a rogue trader owns their ships, the practical effect is similar. When a sector governor speaks, entire worlds move to obey. The social structure surrounding planetary and sector governors creates its own ecosystem of wealth. Noble houses vie for the governor's favor, competing to marry their sons and daughters into the governor's family, or to secure appointments to prestigious positions in the government. Each noble house maintains its own palace, its own wealth, its own power base, creating layers of privilege that extend downward from the governor like ripples from a stone thrown into water. These noble houses often control specific industries or aspects of the planetary economy. One house might hold monopolies on water purification across an entire hive. Another might control the mining operations in a particular region. A third might own the transit systems that move workers between hive levels. Each monopoly generates wealth that flows upward to the noble house, and portions of that wealth flow further upward to the governor in the form of taxes and tithes, but also in the form of gifts, favors, and political support. The result is a system where wealth concentrates at the top to a degree that creates an almost incomprehensible gulf between the rulers and the ruled. A hive noble in the mid-levels might live in what they consider modest comfort, with a few servants and some small luxuries. But compared to an underhive ganger who has never known a full stomach or a day without fear, that noble lives like a king. And compared to the planetary governor in the spire above, that noble is practically destitute. Planetary governors maintain private armies that dwarf anything a rogue trader could field. These are not just the official planetary defense forces that form part of their imperial obligations, but personal guards, elite units sworn to protect the governor and their family. These forces are equipped with the best weapons and armor the planet can produce, trained to the highest standards, and utterly loyal to the governor personally. Some governors have maintained specific elite regiments for centuries, units whose service to the governor's family extends back through generations. The daily routine of a planetary governor is filled with ceremony and ritual that reinforces their position at the apex of their world's hierarchy. Audiences with petitioners seeking favors or redress of grievances, each petitioner required to follow elaborate protocols of dress and behavior. Meetings with advisors and administrators to discuss the endless details of planetary governance. Ceremonial duties that require the governor's presence to legitimize various events and occasions. State dinners with visiting dignitaries, each one an opportunity to display the governor's wealth and power through elaborate feasts and entertainment. And yet, for all their wealth and power, planetary governors live constrained lives in many ways. They are bound by their obligations to the Imperium. They must meet their tithes or face sanctions that could include removal from office or even execution. They must maintain order and prevent heresy, knowing that failure could bring the Inquisition down upon them. They must navigate complex political situations where rivals seek to undermine them and where a single misstep could be fatal. The very wealth and power that makes their position desirable also makes it dangerous, attracting enemies and creating vulnerabilities. Some governors become so paranoid about assassination attempts that they surround themselves with layers of security so extensive that they become virtually prisoners in their own palaces. Food tasters to ensure nothing is poisoned. Bodyguards who never leave their side. Servitors programmed to scan for weapons or hostile intentions. Private chambers protected by void shields and blast doors that could withstand direct hits from orbital bombardment. The irony of being so wealthy and powerful that you must live in constant fear of those who would take that power from you is lost on no one, least of all the governors themselves, the Navis Nobilitae, navigator houses, and their fortunes. Among all the wealthy elites of the Imperium, few can claim the unique position held by the Navis Nobilitae. These are the navigator houses, ancient families whose members possess the rare and precious mutation that allows them to perceive the warp directly and guide ships through its tumultuous currents. Without navigators, interstellar travel as the Imperium knows it would be impossible. This makes them simultaneously invaluable, indispensable, and immensely wealthy. The navigators are mutants, but they are sanctioned mutants, perhaps the only class of mutant that the Imperium not only tolerates, but actively protects and celebrates. The mutation that grants them their third eye, the warp eye that allows them to see the immaterium and chart courses through its impossible geography, appeared in humanity long before the Emperor unified Terra. The great navigator houses have existed for thousands of years, their bloodlines carefully maintained and protected through rigid eugenic programs designed to preserve and strengthen their unique abilities. The wealth of the navigator houses comes from several sources, but the primary one is simple. They control an absolutely critical resource for which there is no substitute. Every starship that travels through the warp requires a navigator to guide it safely. Every merchant vessel, every military ship, every transport and courier that moves between the stars needs navigator services. The Imperium is utterly dependent on the Navis Nobilite, and the navigator houses have leveraged this dependency into wealth and power that rivals that of any other organization in the galaxy. The great magisterial houses are the oldest and most prestigious of the navigator families. These houses trace their lineage back to the very origins of the navigator mutation, maintaining records that span millennia. They are the wealthiest and most traditional, holding vast estates in the Navigator's Quarter on Terra itself, that restricted district where only those of navigator blood or in their service may tread. The Navigator's Quarter is a city unto itself, protected by walls and guards that keep out the uninitiated, a realm where the strange culture and customs of the navigators hold sway. Within the Navigator's Quarter, the great houses maintain palaces that would not look out of place among any other imperial nobility. But these structures often incorporate architectural elements and design philosophies that reflect the navigator's unique perspective on reality. Halls that curve and twist in ways that seem to defy conventional geometry, resonating with the paths they chart through the warp. Windows and viewing portals that show not just the physical world, but overlay it with representations of warp currents and celestial phenomena. Libraries containing not just books, but three-dimensional star charts that map the Imperium in ways that only navigator-trained eyes can fully comprehend. The wealth of a major navigator house is measured in several ways. First, there is the direct income from their navigator's services. Each navigator who guides a ship through the warp is compensated for their service, and while individual payments might seem modest, the aggregate income from hundreds or thousands of family navigators working across the galaxy becomes enormous. A major house might have navigators serving on ships in every segmentum of the Imperium, each one sending portions of their earnings back to the family coffers. But beyond direct payment for services, navigator houses generate wealth through investments and holdings accumulated over millennia. They own shares in shipping companies and merchant guilds. They maintain trading contracts with rogue trader dynasties, planetary governors, and even the Adeptus Mechanicus. They have established monopolies or near monopolies on navigator services in particular regions or sectors, ensuring that anyone needing warp-capable vessels must come to them. The compound interest of thousands of years of such investments creates fortunes that beggar comprehension. The person. Navigator houses are also deeply involved in imperial politics at the highest levels. The Paternova, the eldest and most powerful navigator in the Imperium, maintains a position of tremendous influence, represented on the Senatorum Imperialis by the Paternoval envoy. This political access allows navigator houses to shape policy in ways that protect and enhance their interests. They can influence decisions about where new trade routes are established, how shipping is regulated, which regions receive priority for navigator assignments, all decisions that directly impact their wealth and power. The palaces and estates maintained by the great houses showcase wealth accumulated across millennia. Art collections featuring works from every era of human history, from pre-imperial antiquity through the age of apostasy to the present day. Tapestries woven by artisans whose guilds no longer exist. Sculptures carved from materials found on worlds that have since been destroyed. Ancient tomes containing knowledge preserved nowhere else, including texts about the nature of the warp and how to navigate it that are closely guarded family secrets. Navigator houses maintain their own private security forces, necessary because the value of navigator bloodlines makes them targets for kidnapping, assassination, and other threats. These are not merely bodyguards, but professional military units trained and equipped to the highest standards. Some houses maintain forces numbering in the thousands, complete with armored vehicles, aircraft, and even naval vessels for protecting their void-born assets. The cost of maintaining such forces would bankrupt lesser organizations, but for a major navigator house, it is simply a necessary expense of protecting their most valuable asset, their family bloodlines. The importance of bloodline purity to navigator houses cannot be overstated. Marriage alliances between houses are negotiated with the care and attention typically reserved for interstellar treaties, because every union has the potential to strengthen or weaken the navigator gene. Houses maintain extensive genetic records going back thousands of years, tracking the inheritance of navigator abilities and associated mutations. They employ geneticists and medici specialists whose sole purpose is to advise on breeding programs that will preserve and enhance their family's abilities. This obsession with bloodline creates its own kind of wealth in the form of social capital. A marriage alliance with a prestigious navigator house can elevate a lesser family's position enormously. The children of such unions might possess stronger navigator abilities, making them more valuable as potential pilots. The social connections formed through marriage open doors that wealth alone cannot, granting access to networks and opportunities that exist only within the closed world of the Navis Nobility. The daily life of a navigator noble is a strange combination of luxury and duty. From birth, they are raised knowing that they are special, that they possess abilities that make them invaluable to the Imperium. They receive educations that combine conventional learning with specialized training in their unique abilities. Young navigators study astronomy and astrogation, learn the imperial history and lore, and most importantly, learn to use their warp eye safely, to perceive the Imperium without being driven mad by what they see. Those navigators who choose to actively work as pilots lead lives of adventure and danger. Guiding a ship through the warp is not a simple matter of following a map. It requires constant vigilance, split-second decisions, and the ability to perceive and react to dangers that can destroy ships and souls in an instant. A navigator might spend months aboard a vessel, living in chambers specially designed to allow them to use their abilities safely, emerging from warp transit exhausted and needing days or weeks to recover before making another journey. For their efforts, they are compensated handsomely, but they also enjoy privileges that most crew members cannot access. As a navigator, they are nobility by birth and necessary specialists by function. Captains defer to them on matters of warp travel. They maintain their own quarters separate from the rest of the crew, spaces that might include meditation chambers, private libraries, and even small shrines dedicated to the Emperor's light in the warp, the Astronomicon. Some ships assign servants specifically to attend to the navigator's needs, recognizing that keeping their pilot comfortable and focused is essential to the vessel's survival. Those navigators who do not actively pilot ships still contribute to their houses in other ways. Some become administrators, managing the family's business interests and political relationships. Others serve as mentors and teachers, training the next generation of navigators in the use of their abilities. A few become scholars, studying the nature of the warp and documenting their findings in texts that might be shared within the house, but rarely beyond it. Even those who cannot pilot, perhaps because their mutation manifested in ways that make them unsuitable for that role, still possess value to their families as potential parents of the next generation. The estates maintained by navigator houses are not limited to Terra. Many houses maintain holdings on multiple worlds, establishing enclaves where their family members can live and work in relative security. These estates often become regional centers of navigator activity, places where navigators between assignments can rest, and where the houses can conduct business away from the crowds and complications of the imperial capital. Some of the nomadic navigator houses have eschewed planet-side holdings entirely, choosing to live aboard massive space stations or even fleets of ships. These families have adapted to life in the void so completely that many of their members have never set foot on a planet's surface. Their wealth is measured not in land, but in ships, stations, and the portable assets they carry with them. For these houses, home is wherever their fleet currently resides, and their fortunes travel with them through the void. The political maneuvering within and between navigator houses creates its own complex ecosystem. Alliance and rivalries span centuries, with feuds passed down through generations alongside genetic records and family treasures. A slight given to one house 300 years ago might still influence relationships in the present day. Marriage alliances are made and broken based on calculations involving genetic potential, political advantage, and financial benefit. The result is a web of relationships so complex that some houses employ specialists whose only job is to track and advise on inter-house politics. The Navis Nobilitae as a whole maintains considerable independence from other imperial organizations, operating under ancient pacts that guarantee their autonomy in exchange for their continued service. They are not part of the Adeptus Terra directly, though they work closely with it. They maintain their own internal governance structures, their own courts for resolving disputes, their own traditions and laws that sometimes conflict with wider imperial norms. This independence is jealously guarded because it protects their wealth and power from potential imperial interference. The Adeptus Mechanicus, masters of the Forge worlds. If the navigator houses control access to the warp, the Adeptus Mechanicus controls something equally vital: technology itself. On the Forge worlds scattered throughout the Imperium, the tech priests of Mars pursue their strange fusion of religion and science, manufacturing everything from simple tools to massive titans, all while accumulating wealth and power that places them among the Imperium's true elite. The Adeptus Mechanicus is not simply a department of the Imperium. It is effectively a sovereign power unto itself, bound to the Imperium by ancient treaty, but maintaining its own territories, its own military forces, and its own agenda. At the heart of this empire, within an empire, sits Mars, the red planet, ancient birthplace of the Mechanicus and one of the wealthiest celestial bodies in the galaxy. Mars itself is a monument to industry on a scale that defies easy description. The entire planet has been transformed into a single vast manufacturing complex. Where once there were mountains, now there are forge temples whose spires reach into the rust-red sky. Where once there might have been valleys, now there are excavations that delve kilometers into the planet's crust. Mining operations that have stripped entire regions down to bedrock in the search for resources. The surface is covered in manufactorums, foundries, assembly halls, and reactor complexes, all working ceaselessly to produce the weapons, vehicles, ships, and equipment that the Imperium requires. The wealth generated by Mars alone would be sufficient to make the Mechanicus one of the Imperium's richest institutions. But Mars is merely the first and greatest of hundreds of forge worlds scattered across the galaxy. Each of these worlds has been similarly transformed, its entire surface and subsurface devoted to industrial production. Some specialize in particular types of manufacturing. Riser is famous for its plasma weapons. Metallica produces immense quantities of war material for the forces defending Armageddon. Graia manufactures advanced war machines, including Titans and other vehicles. The Fabricator General of Mars, supreme leader of the Adeptus Mechanicus, is one of the High Lords of Terror and one of the wealthiest individuals in the galaxy. This is not wealth in the conventional sense of personal luxury, though the Fabricator General certainly lives in comfort befitting their station. Rather, it is wealth measured in industrial capacity, in the ability to mobilize resources on a planetary or even sector-wide scale, in the control of technologies that most of the Imperium has forgotten ever existed. The forge temples on Mars and other forge worlds are simultaneously religious sites and industrial complexes, reflecting the Mechanicus belief that machines are sacred and that manufacturing is a form of worship. These structures can be enormous, occupying areas measured in square kilometers and rising kilometers into the sky. Their interiors are filled with endless rows of assembly lines, where servitors and tech priests labor to create the Omnissiah's gifts to humanity. The air thrums with the sound of machinery, the heat from countless furnaces and reactors, the acrid smell of industrial chemicals, and sacred unguents used in manufacturing rituals. Within these forged temples reside the Archmagos, who lead the Mechanicus on each world. These individuals have typically replaced so much of their original bodies with augmetic implants that they are more machine than flesh. Their modifications are not simply functional, but represent wealth in the form of incredibly sophisticated technology. An Archmagos might possess optical sensors that can perceive wavelengths invisible to human eyes, allowing them to see heat, radiation, and electromagnetic fields. They might have multiple mechadendrites, mechanical tentacles that extend from their bodies and can manipulate tools and components with precision no human hand could match. Their brains might be augmented with cogitators that grant them computational abilities far beyond baseline human capacity. These augmentations are not cheap. Each one represents years of work by skilled artificers, incorporating technologies that might be irreplaceable relics from the dark age of technology or carefully crafted replicas made using techniques that take decades to master. Some Archmagos have been accumulating and installing augmetics for centuries, their bodies becoming walking museums of technological achievement. The value of such an individual, measured purely in terms of the technology incorporated into their frame, might exceed the entire economic output of a small planetary economy. But the true wealth of the Mechanicus lies not in individual augmentations, but in their monopoly on knowledge. The Adeptus Mechanicus controls standard template construct patterns, ancient designs from the dark age of technology that describe how to manufacture everything from basic farming equipment to complex weapons systems. These STCs are literally priceless because they contain knowledge that cannot be recreated, only preserved and transmitted. The Mechanicus guards these patterns jealously, parceling them out to other imperial organizations, only under carefully controlled circumstances and always at a price. This monopoly on technical knowledge translates into effective control over the Imperium's entire industrial base. Want to build new Imperial guard tanks? You need the Mechanicus to provide the STC patterns and the manufacturing expertise. Need to repair a damaged starship? Only the Mechanicus has the knowledge and tools to perform the necessary work. Require specialized equipment for a particular military campaign? The Mechanicus can provide it, assuming they can be persuaded to do so, and that persuasion often comes at a cost. The Forge Worlds use this leverage to accumulate wealth in multiple forms. They receive tithes from the worlds they support, payment in raw materials, finished goods, or financial resources. They establish exclusive contracts with planetary governors, sector lords, and rogue trader dynasties, agreements that guarantee regular income in exchange for preferential treatment in manufacturing priority. They trade technologies among themselves, with more advanced Forge Worlds selling or licensing their knowledge to lesser ones. The daily life on a Forge World reveals wealth deployed at a scale most humans cannot comprehend. The populations of these worlds number in the billions, virtually all of them involved in manufacturing in some capacity. These are not independent workers in any meaningful sense. From birth, they are inducted into the cult Mechanicus, taught that their labor is a form of prayer to the machine god, and that their role is to serve the forge in whatever capacity their skills and aptitudes allow. For most of these billions, life is grim and short. They work in conditions that would kill baseline humans within days, their bodies enhanced with crude augmetics that allow them to survive in toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, or radiation-flooded environments. They toil in manufactorums that never stop, shifts continuing around the clock in 3 or 4 rotations that keep the production lines running constantly. They breathe air so polluted that it would be lethal without respirators. They rarely see natural light, spending their entire lives in the depths of forge, complexes lit only by the glow of furnaces and the occasional lumen strip. But for the tech priests who oversee this labor, life is entirely different. They inhabit levels of the forge temples that most workers never see, spaces designed for study, contemplation, and the pursuit of knowledge. Their quarters might feature private workshops where they can conduct their own research and experimentation. They have access to archives containing texts and data that document millennia of technological development. They study in scholars where the mysteries of the Omnissiah are taught to those deemed worthy of such knowledge. Senior magos and archmagos live in luxury by any standard, though it is a luxury defined by access to technology and knowledge rather than conventional comfort. Their personal chambers might be filled with rare books and data cores containing information found nowhere else in the Imperium. They might possess private laboratories equipped with instruments so sensitive and sophisticated that using them requires decades of training. They accumulate collections of technology, some of it functional and some merely historical, each piece representing a fragment of humanity's lost greatness. The Mechanicus also maintains its own military forces, distinct from the Imperial Guard or Navy. The Skitarii legions are cybernetically enhanced soldiers who serve the Forge Worlds, their bodies modified to make them more effective warriors. These are not the crude augmentations given to menial workers, but sophisticated military modifications that can turn a human into a walking weapons platform. A Skitarii soldier might have targeting systems built into their visual cortex, making them supernaturally accurate with ranged weapons. They might possess enhanced reflexes that allow them to react faster than baseline humans. Their armor might be integrated directly into their bodies, becoming part of their physical form rather than something they wear. The cost of creating and maintaining Skitarii legions is enormous, but the Forge worlds bear this expense because they need military forces to protect their territories and advance their interests. Some Forge worlds maintain Skitarii forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands or even millions, armies sufficient to conquer entire planets if necessary. These forces are equipped with weapons and equipment that represents the cutting edge of Mechanicus technology, gear that would be the envy of any Imperial Guard regiment. And beyond the Skitarii, some Forge worlds maintain Titan legions, walking god machines that tower over the battlefield like mobile fortresses. A single Titan represents an investment of resources that would bankrupt most planetary economies. The cost of manufacturing one, maintaining it, and training its princeps and crew is astronomical. Yet the largest Forge worlds maintain multiple Titan legions, dozens or even hundreds of these massive war machines, each one a statement of the Mechanicus's wealth and power. The Forge worlds also control orbital infrastructure that further enhances their wealth. Shipyards capable of constructing vessels ranging from small system ships to massive battleships and grand cruisers. Space stations that serve as transfer points for raw materials coming from mining operations throughout their systems. Defense platforms equipped with weapons capable of obliterating approaching fleets. All of this represents capital investment on a scale that takes centuries or millennia to build up, but which, once established, generates wealth through its mere existence. The mining operations that feed the Forge worlds are themselves enterprises of incredible scale. The Mechanicus strips entire asteroids for their mineral content. They establish operations on lifeless moons and planets, extracting every useful element and leaving behind barren husks when they move on. They trade for raw materials with other Imperial organizations, offering technology or manufacturing capacity in exchange for the ores and compounds they need to feed their forges. Some Archmagos have transcended the material pursuit of wealth entirely, focusing instead on the acquisition of knowledge as the highest form of treasure. These individuals, often termed radical even within the Mechanicus, pursue forbidden technologies or conduct research into areas that the mainstream organization considers heretical. They might maintain hidden laboratories where they study xenotech, analyzing alien devices to understand the principles behind them. They might experiment with archaeotech, attempting to reverse engineer ancient human technologies whose function is no longer understood. This pursuit of knowledge is dangerous, as it can attract the attention of the Inquisition. But for these radicals, the potential rewards justify the risks. The relationship between the Mechanicus and the rest of the Imperium is complex, defined by mutual need and mutual suspicion. The Imperium requires the Mechanicus's manufacturing capacity and technical expertise. Without the Mechanicus, the Imperial war machine would grind to a halt within years as equipment broke down and could not be repaired, as ammunition and weapons ran out and could not be replaced. But the Mechanicus also needs the Imperium, both for the raw materials and markets that the Million Worlds provide, and for the protection that the Imperial military offers against the Mechanicus's many enemies. This interdependence creates a situation where the Mechanicus operates with an independence that no other Imperial organization enjoys. They make their own decisions about where to allocate resources, which projects to pursue, which technologies to develop or suppress. They conduct their own diplomacy with other Imperial organizations, and sometimes even with xenospecies, seeking technologies or knowledge that they believe will benefit the Omnissiah's domain. They pursue their own agenda, which does not always align with the Imperium's broader goals, and they do so with the wealth and power necessary to resist most attempts to control them. The Ecclesiarchy, wealth through faith. If the Mechanicus controls technology and the navigators control warp travel, the Ecclesiarchy controls something perhaps more fundamental: the souls and faith of humanity itself. As the official state church of the Imperium, the Adeptus Ministorum wields spiritual authority over billions of souls across 1 million worlds, and it has leveraged this authority into wealth and power that rivals any other imperial institution. The ecclesiarchy's wealth comes from a source that is both simple and profound: tithes and offerings from the faithful. On every imperial world, billions of citizens make offerings to the imperial cult, gifts of money, goods, or service intended to demonstrate their devotion to the God Emperor and to secure their soul's salvation. Some of these offerings are modest: a few thrones from a poor worker who can barely afford the contribution. Others are enormous: entire estates bequeathed to the church by dying nobles, or ships and cargoes donated by merchant guilds seeking the emperor's favor for their enterprises. Aggregated across 1 million worlds and billions of faithful, these offerings become a river of wealth flowing into the ecclesiarchy's coffers. By the end of the 33rd millennium, according to ancient records, every imperial world had been furnished with its own cathedral, and the ecclesiarchy's treasuries were filled beyond measure. This wealth has only grown in the millennia since, as new worlds have been brought into the Imperium's fold, and as existing populations have continued their faithful devotions. The ecclesiarchical palace on Terra represents perhaps the most visible expression of this wealth. This immense structure covers nearly all of Terra's southernmost continent, a sprawling complex of cathedrals, chapels, administrative buildings, and residences that houses the center of the imperial faith. To walk its halls is to traverse a monument to devotion expressed through material excess, where every surface is decorated, every corner holds some relic or artwork, and the sheer scale of the construction overwhelms visitors with its grandeur. The palace's main cathedral is a structure of such immense proportions that it can hold millions of worshippers at once. Its ceiling soars hundreds of meters overhead, decorated with frescoes depicting the emperor's life and deeds in elaborate detail. Its windows are made of actual stained glass, each pane a masterwork created by artisans who devoted their entire lives to perfecting their craft. Its floors are polished marble, imported from the finest quarries in the Imperium, inlaid with precious metals and gems in patterns that form images of imperial saints and holy symbols. The ecclesiarch, supreme head of the imperial cult and one of the high lords of Terra, resides within this palace in quarters that befit their station as spiritual leader of humanity. Their personal chambers occupy an entire wing of the palace complex, including private chapels, where they can conduct devotions away from public view, audience halls where they meet with cardinals and other high-ranking clergy, libraries containing theological texts from throughout imperial history, and living spaces appointed with luxury that would not seem out of place in a planetary governor's palace. The ecclesiarch's vestments alone represent wealth on a scale difficult to comprehend. These are not simply robes, but works of art, each one requiring months or years to create, featuring embroidery worked in threads of gold and silver, decorated with gems and relics, incorporating materials so rare that acquiring them requires the resources of the entire ecclesiarchy. Some vestments have been passed down through generations of ecclesiarchs, accumulating history and religious significance that makes them irreplaceable treasures. Below the ecclesiarch in the church's hierarchy sit the cardinals, several thousand individuals who oversee dioceses spanning sectors, subsectors, or in some cases, entire worlds. These cardinals are themselves phenomenally wealthy, their positions granting them access to the tithes and offerings of billions of faithful. A cardinal's personal fortune might rival that of a successful rogue trader, accumulated through centuries of service, gifts from grateful faithful, and the simple accumulation that happens when one controls flows of wealth on such a massive scale. Cardinal worlds represent the ecclesiarchy's direct territorial holdings, planets ruled entirely by the church rather than by conventional planetary governors. On these worlds, faith is not just the dominant organizing principle, but the only one. Entire continents might be covered in cathedrals and shrines. Populations might number in the billions, with most citizens engaged in religious observances, creating religious artwork, or maintaining the countless churches and chapels that dot the landscape. Ophelia 7 is perhaps the most famous cardinal world after Terra itself, serving as the seat of the Synod Ministra and hosting a concentration of religious power second only to Terra's ecclesiarchal palace. The entire world is a monument to faith, with cities built around and into massive cathedrals, agricultural areas dedicated to growing materials for religious art and ceremony, and industrial complexes that produce the vestments, icons, and other material goods the Church requires. On such worlds, the cardinal who rules lives in luxury that reflects both their spiritual authority and the material wealth flowing through their hands. Their palaces rival those of planetary governors, incorporating both governmental functions and religious significance. These are places where the cardinal can conduct the business of ruling a world while also serving as the spiritual shepherd of billions of souls, buildings designed to inspire awe and demonstrate the Church's power and glory. The treasuries maintained by the ecclesiarchy on cardinal worlds and other major holdings contain wealth almost beyond counting. Gold and silver measured in tons, used for everything from decorating churches to creating religious icons to simple storage of value. Gems and precious stones collected over millennia, some set in religious artifacts, and others stored in vaults awaiting use in future projects. Ancient relics with religious significance, items that might have no intrinsic value, but whose connection to imperial saints or historic events makes them literally priceless. But perhaps the most valuable assets the ecclesiarchy controls are not material at all, but spiritual and social. The Church's ability to declare someone a saint, to authorize wars of faith, to excommunicate individuals, or declare entire populations heretical. These represent forms of power that can be as valuable as any amount of wealth. A cardinal's word can ruin a noble family's reputation, destroy a merchant guild's business, or bring down a planetary governor. This soft power translates into material benefit, as those who wish to avoid the Church's displeasure or gain its favor offer gifts, establish endowments, and otherwise channel wealth toward the ecclesiarchy. The adept sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, serve as the ecclesiarchy's military arm, a force of highly trained and zealously devoted warriors who combine martial prowess with absolute faith. Maintaining these orders requires enormous resources. Each sister is equipped with power armor that rivals what Space Marines wear, weapons of the highest quality, and access to specialized equipment including vehicles and aircraft. The cost of outfitting and maintaining even a single order of sisters would bankrupt most planetary governments, yet the ecclesiarchy maintains multiple orders across the galaxy. The Schola Progenium represents another form of investment that generates long-term value for the ecclesiarchy. These institutions take in the orphans of imperial servants who have died in service and raise them in strict adherence to imperial cult teachings. Many progena go on to serve in various imperial organizations, becoming commissars, arbitrators, inquisitors, or members of the Adepta Sororitas. This creates a network of individuals throughout the Imperium who were raised by the ecclesiarchy and who often maintain loyalty to the Church even as they serve in other capacities. The daily operation of the ecclesiarchy requires a vast bureaucracy, the Creed Temporal, which handles the Church's worldly business. This organization, led by archdeacons, manages the construction of new cathedrals, oversees the collection and distribution of tithes, handles logistics for pilgrimages, and generally ensures that the material side of the Church functions smoothly. These administrators wield considerable power despite their subordinate position in the Church hierarchy, as they control access to resources and can influence which projects receive funding and which do not. Pilgrimages represent another source of wealth for the ecclesiarchy. Millions of faithful travel each year to visit sites of religious significance, from minor shrines on their homeworlds to major sites like Terra or Ophelia 7. These pilgrims need transportation, lodging, food, and various religious items to complete their journeys. The ecclesiarchy and organizations associated with it provide these services, generating income while also reinforcing the faithful's connection to the church. Some shrine worlds have become entirely dependent on pilgrim traffic, their economies revolving around the millions or billions who visit each year to worship at particularly sacred sites. These might be places where miracles occurred, where saints performed their greatest deeds, or where particularly significant events in imperial history transpired. The ecclesiarchy maintains these sites, often at enormous expense, but the investment is justified by both the religious significance and the wealth that flows from maintaining control over such important locations. The Missionaria Galaxia, the ecclesiarchy's missionary arm, operates across the galaxy, bringing the imperial cult to newly discovered or rediscovered human worlds. These missionaries travel aboard rogue trader vessels, Adeptus Mechanicus explorator fleets, and military expeditions, always ready to begin converting populations to the worship of the God Emperor. This missionary work is expensive, requiring the church to maintain and equip thousands of missionaries who might spend years or decades in transit to reach their assignments, but it represents an investment in the church's future, bringing new populations and their tithes into the imperial fold. The relationship between the ecclesiarchy and other imperial institutions is complex and sometimes contentious. The church's wealth and independence can put it at odds with the administratum over taxation and resource allocation. Its missionary activities sometimes conflict with the Mechanicus's desire to control how technology is understood and used. Its declarations of heresy can create friction with planetary governors who see their populations or rivals targeted by the church. Yet the ecclesiarchy's control over the spiritual lives of billions gives it leverage that even the most powerful secular authorities must respect. Cardinals often engage in elaborate political maneuvering, forming alliances with other institutions and noble houses to advance their positions within the church hierarchy or to secure resources for their dioceses. A cardinal might ally with a forge world to ensure their worlds receive priority for military equipment, offering in exchange the church's support for the forge world's territorial claims or resource demands. Another might establish close relationships with rogue trader dynasties, offering spiritual legitimacy to their enterprises in exchange for favorable trade terms. The wars of faith declared by the ecclesiarchy represent another form of wealth deployment and acquisition. These are massive military campaigns launched to reclaim worlds that have fallen to heresy, to punish populations that have strayed from the imperial cult, or to expand the ecclesiarchy's direct holdings. Such wars require enormous resources, mobilizing armies of faithful, funding military operations, and often resulting in the conquest of new territories that then come under ecclesiarchical control. The wealth expended on these wars is justified by the spiritual benefits of reclaiming souls for the emperor and the material benefits of expanding the church's power. The High Lords of Terror, the ultimate power. At the very apex of imperial power sit the High Lords of Terror, the 12 individuals who collectively form the Senatorum Imperialis and rule the Imperium in the emperor's name. These are not merely wealthy individuals or powerful officials. They represent the ultimate concentration of authority in the galaxy, and with that authority comes access to resources on a scale that dwarfs even the massive wealth of rogue traders, navigator houses, or the ecclesiarchy. The High Lords are not all equally wealthy in terms of personal fortunes. Some positions on the Senatorum, like the Master of the Administratum or the Fabricator General of Mars, come with institutional wealth that is effectively unlimited. Others, like the Inquisitorial Representative, wield influence and authority that can access resources without technically controlling them directly. But all High Lords share one critical characteristic: the ability to shape policy and direct resources at a galactic scale. The Master of the Administratum oversees the vast bureaucracy that manages the Imperium's day-to-day operations. This position grants effective control over the Imperium's finances, as all other Imperial organizations must work through the administratum for budgeting and resource allocation. The Master does not personally own the Imperium's wealth, but they control access to it, which in practical terms amounts to the same thing. A word from the Master of the Administratum can redirect the output of entire sectors, authorize expenditures that would fund lesser institutions for centuries, or deny resources to those who have fallen out of favor. The personal quarters of a High Lord, located within or near the Imperial Palace on Terra, represent luxury on a scale matched only by the very wealthiest members of Imperial society. These are not simply large or well-appointed. They are designed to reflect the High Lord's position at the pinnacle of human civilization, incorporating the best of everything the Imperium can provide. Artwork commissioned from the greatest living artists. Furniture crafted by master artisans using materials imported from across the galaxy. Personal libraries containing texts so rare that only a handful of copies exist. Private chambers protected by security measures that could withstand assaults by entire armies. The daily routine of a High Lord involves making decisions that affect billions or trillions of lives. Authorizing the founding of new Space Marine chapters, a decision that will shape Imperial military capacity for millennia to come. Approving or denying requests for resources from planetary governors or sector lords. Determinations that might mean the difference between prosperity and collapse for entire regions. Setting tithe requirements that will impact every world in the Imperium. Declaring crusades or wars that will mobilize military forces on an unprecedented scale. The influence wielded by the High Lords extends into every corner of Imperial society. Noble houses seek their patronage, knowing that a High Lord's favor can elevate a family's fortunes, while their displeasure can destroy. Rogue trader dynasties cultivate relationships with individual High Lords, offering gifts and services in hopes of securing favorable treatment for their enterprises. Planetary governors and sector lords lobby the High Lords for reduced tithe requirements or increased military support. Everyone with ambition or need eventually must deal with the Senatorum Imperialis in some capacity. The High Lords maintain their own security forces, necessary both for their personal protection and to enforce their will when necessary. The Adeptus Custodes, while primarily dedicated to guarding the Emperor himself, also serve to protect the Imperial Palace, and by extension, the High Lords who rule from within it. Beyond the Custodes, many High Lords maintain personal guards drawn from the most elite military units in the Imperium, warriors whose loyalty is absolute and whose capabilities are matched only by their discretion. The Chancellor of the Estate Imperium, one of the High Lord positions, oversees the Imperium's financial matters directly. This individual has access to records detailing the economic activity of the entire Imperium, information that is itself more valuable than any amount of currency. Knowing which sectors are prospering and which are struggling, which resources are becoming scarce and which are in oversupply, which trade routes are profitable and which are endangered, this knowledge allows for decisions that can generate wealth on an astronomical scale. Some High Lords use their positions to accumulate personal fortunes that rival those of any other wealthy individual in the Imperium. Through carefully managed investments, through steering contracts and opportunities toward entities they control through intermediaries, through accepting gifts that are technically legal but amount to barely disguised bribes, these individuals amass wealth that ensures their families will remain among the elite for generations to come. Other High Lords remain relatively modest in their personal circumstances, either from genuine dedication to service, or from an understanding that excessive personal enrichment can create vulnerabilities that enemies might exploit. The political maneuvering within the Senatorum Imperialis is complex and often deadly. High Lords form alliances and blocs to advance their agendas, trading support on one issue for concessions on another. They engage in subtle warfare, using their institutional power to undermine rivals or support allies. The Master of the Administratum might delay funding for a project supported by a rival High Lord. The Fabricator General might refuse to provide technology needed by another High Lord's organization. The Ecclesiarch might declare that certain policies conflict with church teachings, providing religious justification for opposition to proposals they dislike for entirely secular reasons. Despite these internal conflicts, the High Lords generally maintain a unified front when dealing with external threats or challenges to their collective authority. They understand that their position at the apex of imperial power is maintained only through mutual support and shared interest in preserving the system that grants them such authority. Threats to one High Lord are often treated as threats to the entire council, and the Senatorum can move with frightening efficiency when properly motivated. The resources available to the High Lords in times of crisis are virtually unlimited. When war threatens the Imperium, the High Lords can authorize the raising of Imperial Guard armies numbering in the millions or billions, can direct entire Space Marine chapters to battle, can command the Imperial Navy to deploy battle fleets that eclipse the sun. When threats arise that require subtler approaches, they can activate the Officio Assassinorum, directing these elite killers against targets ranging from individual heretics to entire planetary governments. When investigation is needed, the Inquisition stands ready to carry out their will. The longevity treatments available to High Lords allow many to remain in their positions for centuries. Juvenat treatments, augmetic replacements, and the best medical care in the Imperium keep death at bay far longer than natural human lifespans would allow. Some High Lords have held their positions for so long that they have become institutions unto themselves, their personal experience spanning centuries of imperial history, their networks of allies and subordinates having had generations to develop and mature. This extended tenure allows High Lords to accumulate knowledge and connections that become weapons in their own right. A High Lord who has served for 3 centuries knows secrets about the Imperium that most others cannot even imagine. They have seen crises come and go, have watched institutional reforms succeed or fail, have learned through hard experience what works and what does not. This wisdom, combined with the institutional power of their positions, makes the oldest and most experienced High Lords virtually impossible to remove or effectively oppose. Yet for all their power and wealth, the High Lords live with constraints that lesser individuals do not face. They cannot simply do as they please. They are bound by tradition, by the expectations of their offices, by the need to maintain at least a facade of working toward the Imperium's benefit rather than their personal gain. They must constantly balance competing demands and navigate political minefields where a single misstep could be fatal. They are targets for those who would seize their power, facing threats ranging from ambitious subordinates to traitors within their own organizations to external enemies who would gladly see them dead. The responsibility of their positions weighs heavily on some High Lords. They make decisions that will result in billions of deaths. They authorize actions that will cause untold suffering in pursuit of strategic objectives. They know that their choices will echo through imperial history for centuries or millennia, affecting the lives of people not yet born. This burden can break lesser individuals, and even among the High Lords, some crack under the pressure, becoming tyrants, madmen, or so paralyzed by the weight of their decisions that they become ineffective. Others embrace their power fully, using it to reshape the Imperium according to their visions or to advance their personal agendas with little regard for the consequences. These High Lords are the most dangerous, as they combine tremendous power with the will to use it without restraint. They can cause catastrophic damage before their fellow High Lords can move to remove them, and the conflicts that arise when the Senatorum turns against one of its own can shake the entire Imperium. Inquisitor Lords, shadow wealth, and hidden resources. Beyond the visible hierarchies of the Imperium, operating in shadows and wielding power, that often exceeds their official authority, the Inquisition maintains its own elite. Inquisitor Lords, the senior members of this secretive organization, command resources that can rival those of planetary governors or sector lords, yet much of their wealth remains hidden, deployed through networks of agents and carefully concealed assets. An Inquisitor Lord's wealth differs fundamentally from that of most other imperial elites. They do not maintain palaces or estates, at least not openly. They do not display their riches through ostentatious consumption or elaborate ceremonies. Instead, their wealth is functional, distributed through networks of safe houses, hidden caches, and disguised assets that allow them to operate anywhere in the Imperium with the resources needed to accomplish their missions. The position of Inquisitor Lord is not one of formal rank, but rather recognition of power and influence earned through decades or centuries of service. An Inquisitor who has proven their ability, built their own networks of informants and agents, accumulated significant resources, and demonstrated the judgment necessary to wield great power responsibly, may be nominated by an existing Inquisitor Lord for elevation to that status. The approval of 3 Inquisitor Lords is required, ensuring that only those who have truly earned the respect of their peers receive this recognition. Once elevated to Inquisitor Lord status, an individual gains access to resources that were previously unavailable to them. The Inquisition maintains hidden treasuries and armories scattered throughout the Imperium, vaults containing everything from currency to weapons to intelligence archives. An Inquisitor Lord can draw upon these resources as needed, taking what they require for their investigations, without the bureaucratic procedures that would constrain other Imperial officials. The personal retinue of an Inquisitor Lord represents a significant investment of resources. These are not simply bodyguards or assistants, but highly skilled specialists whose abilities are essential to the Inquisitor's work. A psyker whose talents allow them to sense the presence of heresy or read the thoughts of suspects. A tech priest who can interface with ancient cogitators or analyze xenotech artifacts. Warriors trained in combat techniques that allow them to face threats ranging from cultists to demons. Each member of the retinue represents years of training and considerable expense, yet an established Inquisitor Lord might maintain a retinue numbering dozens or even hundreds. Inquisitor Lords have access to transportation that reflects both their need for mobility and the resources at their disposal. Ships that might appear to be ordinary merchant vessels or transport craft, but which contain hidden armories, holding cells for prisoners, and sophisticated communications equipment. Some Inquisitor Lords maintain multiple ships, allowing them to operate in different regions simultaneously or to have backup vessels available if one is compromised. The cost of acquiring and maintaining such vessels would be prohibitive for most individuals, but the Inquisition's resources, combined with the Inquisitor Lord's personal wealth accumulated over decades of service, make it feasible. The intelligence networks maintained by Inquisitor Lords represent another form of wealth, one measured not in currency, but in access to information. An established Inquisitor Lord might have informants on hundreds of worlds, agents embedded in positions ranging from hive gang leadership to planetary government offices. These networks take decades to build and maintain, requiring constant investment of resources to keep the informants loyal and productive. But the intelligence they provide is invaluable, often giving the Inquisitor Lord advance warning of threats or opportunities that others cannot perceive. Some Inquisitor Lords accumulate forbidden knowledge, texts and artifacts that they keep hidden from the wider Inquisition because their possession or study might be considered heretical. These might include xenotech that the Inquisitor studies to better understand alien threats, chaos artifacts that provide insights into demonic abilities and weaknesses, ancient texts from before the age of the Imperium that contain information deemed too dangerous for general distribution. The value of such items cannot be measured in conventional terms, as their mere existence would provoke severe sanctions if discovered, yet the knowledge they contain can be crucial to facing particular threats. The inquisitorial fortresses, maintained on various worlds, provide inquisitor lords with secure bases of operation. These structures are designed to be both defensible against external assault and secure against internal corruption. Their walls are blessed and warded against demonic incursion. Their vaults contain archives of classified information dating back millennia. Their armories hold weapons suitable for fighting every conceivable enemy, from conventional arms to specialized equipment for dealing with psychers or demons. An inquisitor, lord, with access to such a fortress can draw upon resources that would take years or decades to assemble elsewhere. The relationship between inquisitor lords and other imperial institutions is carefully managed. While an inquisitor lord technically has the authority to commandeer resources from other organizations, doing so carelessly can create enemies and complicate future operations. Successful inquisitor lords learn to negotiate, trade favors, and build relationships that allow them to access resources they need without creating unnecessary friction. An inquisitor lord who has cultivated good relationships with the local adeptus mechanicus might be able to requisition sophisticated equipment with a simple request, while one who has alienated the tech priests might find every requisition delayed or denied. Some inquisitor lords have accumulated personal fortunes through centuries of service, either through careful investment of resources or through claiming portions of wealth seized from heretics and traitors. These personal funds allow them to operate with even greater independence, purchasing equipment or bribing officials without having to justify expenditures to the wider Inquisition. The exact size of these fortunes remains secret, as inquisitor lords have good reason to conceal the full extent of their resources from both enemies and potential rivals within their own organization. The inquisitorial representative, who sits among the High Lords of Terror, is typically an inquisitor lord, though the position rotates among several such individuals, rather than being held permanently by one person. This role grants the holder access to the highest levels of imperial government and the ability to influence policy decisions that affect the entire Imperium. The inquisitorial representative can direct resources toward investigations they deem important, can call upon the resources of the wider Imperium to support inquisitorial operations, and can ensure that the Inquisition's concerns are heard when major decisions are being made. Grandmasters, the Inquisitor Lords, who oversee entire sectors or subsectors, wield power that approaches that of sector governors. They coordinate the activities of all Inquisitors operating in their domains, direct investigations of major threats, and maintain intelligence networks that span hundreds of worlds. The resources required to fulfill these responsibilities are enormous, but Grandmasters have access to everything the Inquisition can provide, plus their own accumulated assets from decades or centuries of service. The hidden nature of much inquisitorial wealth makes it difficult to compare directly with the more visible fortunes of rogue traders or planetary governors, but the practical effect is similar or even greater. An Inquisitor, Lord, can arrive on a world and within days have access to weapons, transport, intelligence, and support that would take a conventional commander months to assemble. They can draw upon resources stockpiled over centuries, call upon debts owed by individuals and organizations across the Imperium, and leverage their authority to requisition whatever they need. Yet for all their resources, Inquisitor Lords must operate carefully. Their power derives from the Inquisition's charter and the respect they have earned from their peers, both of which can be revoked if they abuse their authority too egregiously. An Inquisitor, Lord who becomes too arrogant, who makes too many enemies, or who is suspected of falling to the very corruption they are supposed to fight, may find themselves the target of investigation by their fellow Inquisitors. The resources they have accumulated will not protect them if the Inquisition turns against them, as the organization has ways of dealing with traitors within its ranks that are both efficient and final. Living in unimaginable luxury, daily life of the ultra-wealthy. The daily lives of the Imperium's wealthiest citizens bear little resemblance to the existence known by the vast majority of humanity. While billions toil in darkness, breathe toxic air, and struggle simply to survive from one day to the next, those at the pinnacle of imperial society experience realities so divorced from baseline human existence that the gap becomes almost incomprehensible. Consider the simple matter of food. For a hive worker, sustenance comes in the form of corpse starch, a processed nutrient paste created from recycled organic matter, including, inevitably, the bodies of the dead. It provides the minimum nutrition necessary to keep a worker alive and productive, but it tastes of nothing, offers no pleasure, and represents merely the biological necessity of fueling the body for another day's labor. For a planetary governor or successful rogue trader, every meal is an opportunity for both pleasure and display. Their tables feature foods that most humans will never see. Fresh fruits grown in carefully tended gardens, each one representing days or weeks of skilled cultivation. Meats from animals raised in near-natural environments, slaughtered and prepared by master chefs whose entire lives are dedicated to culinary perfection. Spices imported from across the galaxy, some so rare that grams of them are worth more than entire hive levels. Wines and spirits aged for decades or centuries in conditions that enhance their complexity and flavor. The preparation of such meals is itself a form of art. Master chefs who have trained for decades prepare dishes that combine flavors and textures in ways designed to create specific experiences. Servers trained in elaborate protocols present each course with ceremony that elevates eating from mere sustenance to ritual performance. The dining chambers where these meals are consumed feature artwork and architecture designed to enhance the experience, creating environments that engage all senses simultaneously. Living spaces for the ultra-wealthy are designed on a scale that makes normal human habitation seem cramped and squalid by comparison. A single bedroom in a governor's palace might be larger than an entire hab unit that houses a family of hive workers. These rooms are not merely large, but designed with attention to every detail. Floors of polished stone or hardwood, materials that take years to produce and install. Walls decorated with artwork ranging from ancient frescoes to modern hololithic displays. Furniture crafted by master artisans using techniques passed down through generations. Every element chosen not just for function, but for aesthetic value, and the statement it makes about the inhabitants' wealth and taste. Climate control in these spaces maintains perfect comfort at all times. While hive workers swelter in the heat generated by countless machines or freeze in the perpetual cold of lower levels, the wealthy live in environments precisely calibrated to their preferences. Temperature, humidity, air quality, even lighting, all adjusted and maintained by sophisticated systems that require teams of servitors and technicians to operate. Some wealthy individuals never experience physical discomfort of any kind, their entire existence cushioned by technology designed to anticipate and address their every need. Personal hygiene for the wealthy involves luxuries that most people cannot even imagine. Bathing in actual water, not the chemical cleaners used in hives, water purified to standards that make it cleaner than anything most humans will drink. Soaps and oils, scented with rare botanicals, each one representing ingredients sourced from across the galaxy. Servants trained specifically in the art of grooming, capable of styling hair, maintaining skin, and otherwise ensuring their masters present themselves perfectly at all times. Clothing for the ultra-wealthy is crafted from materials and using techniques that elevate garments to the level of artwork. Fabrics woven from threads so fine that creating a single robe might take months of labor. Dyes extracted from rare organisms, some found on only one world in the entire Imperium. Tailoring so precise that each garment fits its wearer perfectly, taking into account not just measurements, but movement patterns and personal preferences. Some items of clothing are passed down through generations, heirlooms whose value increases with age and whose historical significance makes them irreplaceable. Jewelry and personal adornment reaches levels of excess that border on the ridiculous. Gems the size of fingernails, each one worth more than most people earn in lifetimes, set in precious metals worked by master jewelers. Crowns and tiaras incorporating dozens or hundreds of such gems, weighing kilograms and requiring special supports to wear comfortably. Rings and bracelets that are themselves small fortunes, worn casually as everyday accessories. Some of these pieces incorporate technology, featuring digital weapons or force field generators hidden within items that appear purely decorative. Transportation for the wealthy reflects their status and resources. While common citizens walk or crowd into mass transit systems designed to move thousands with minimal comfort, the elite travel in private vehicles equipped with every luxury. Ground cars with interiors featuring couches upholstered in exotic leathers. Climate control maintaining perfect comfort. Entertainment systems providing access to cultural works from across the Imperium. Air cars capable of bypassing ground-level traffic entirely, soaring above the crowds and providing views that most citizens never see. Personal spacecraft for those whose business takes them between worlds. Vessels that might be larger than the homes of hundreds of ordinary families. Security for the ultra-wealthy is omnipresent and sophisticated. Bodyguards accompany them everywhere. Warriors trained to identify and neutralize threats before they materialize. Automated defense systems monitor their residences continuously, scanning for weapons, analyzing behavior patterns, identifying potential dangers. Some wealthy individuals are so paranoid about assassination that they employ food tasters, use servants who have been raised from birth to be loyal, and maintain safe rooms equipped to survive everything from conventional assault to demonic attack. Entertainment and leisure for the wealthy takes forms that most citizens cannot even conceive. Private theaters where performances are staged for audiences of one or a handful. Productions that might cost more to perform than entire hive gangs control. Art collections featuring works from throughout human history. Galleries that would be the envy of planetary museums. Libraries containing books so rare that only a few copies exist in the entire galaxy. Some of them, the only surviving records of lost civilizations or forgotten knowledge. Some wealthy individuals maintain exotic pets or collections of living creatures from across the galaxy. Animals from death worlds, kept in carefully controlled environments that replicate their native habitats. Exotic birds whose plumage features colors that exist nowhere else in nature. Creatures from alien worlds, obtained through rogue trader expeditions and maintained at enormous expense. Each specimen represents a significant investment and ongoing costs that would support dozens of normal families. Social interactions among the wealthy follow elaborate protocols designed to demonstrate status and reinforce hierarchy. Invitations to events are coveted, as they represent both social recognition and opportunities to form alliances or negotiate business. The events themselves are spectacles of conspicuous consumption, featuring decorations that might take weeks to install, entertainment imported from across sectors, and displays of wealth that serve no purpose beyond demonstrating the host's ability to command such resources. Medical care for the wealthy represents perhaps the most stark contrast with the lives of ordinary citizens. While hive workers die from treatable conditions because they lack access to even basic medical care, the elite receive treatments that can extend life far beyond normal human spans, or repair injuries that would cripple or kill baseline humans. Juvenat treatments slow or reverse aging, allowing the wealthy to maintain youth and vigor for decades or centuries beyond normal lifespans. Augmetic replacements repair damage or enhance capabilities, turning the human body into something more than merely flesh. Gene therapy can correct inherited conditions or optimize physical and mental performance. Some wealthy individuals have lived for hundreds of years, their bodies sustained through combinations of juvenat treatments, augmetic replacements, and medical maintenance, interventions that require teams of specialists to maintain. These ancient individuals represent living history, having experienced events that to most people are merely records in archives. Their accumulated knowledge and experience makes them valuable counselors and dangerous opponents, as they have had centuries to perfect their skills at manipulation and political maneuvering. The children of the wealthy are raised in environments designed to prepare them for positions of power while shielding them from the harsh realities that define most human lives. Private tutors provide education in subjects ranging from conventional academic material to esoteric arts like diplomacy, strategy, and the management of vast enterprises. Training in weapons and combat prepares them to defend themselves and command forces in their future roles. Cultural education ensures they can appreciate and participate in the arts and ceremonies that define elite society. These children grow up never knowing, never experiencing the grinding poverty that shapes the lives of billions of their fellow humans. They learn from birth that they are special, that they are destined for greatness, that the resources and respect of others are their birthright. This conditioning creates individuals who are supremely confident, sometimes arrogant, always certain of their place at the pinnacle of human civilization. When they eventually inherit their family's wealth and position, they step into roles they have been preparing for since childhood, continuing cycles that have persisted for generations or centuries. Yet for all their luxury and privilege, the ultra-wealthy of the Imperium often live constrained lives. They are prisoners of their positions, bound by duties and expectations that allow little freedom. A planetary governor cannot simply abandon their post to pursue personal interests. A rogue trader inherits obligations to their dynasty that supersede individual preferences. A cardinal serves the ecclesiarchy first and their own desires second. The wealth and power they enjoy comes with responsibilities that can weigh heavily, and many discover that having everything does not equate to having freedom. The psychological toll of existing at the apex of such an unequal society affects different individuals differently. Some become so disconnected from normal human experience that they lose the ability to empathize with those below them, seeing ordinary citizens as resources to be managed rather than people deserving of consideration. Others are consumed by guilt at their privilege, though few let this guilt motivate actual changes in the systems that maintain their wealth. A few use their resources to try to improve conditions for those less fortunate, though such efforts are constrained by the fundamental structure of imperial society, which requires and maintains extreme inequality. The contrast between the lives of the ultra-wealthy and the existence of ordinary citizens is not just a matter of degree, but of kind. They do not merely have more, they live in fundamentally different realities. While a hive worker struggles to survive another day in grinding poverty, a planetary governor makes decisions about the fates of billions from chambers decorated with artwork worth more than entire hab blocks. While a rogue trader dines on delicacies imported from across the galaxy, citizens die from malnutrition in the very same system. The gulf between these experiences is so vast that those on one side can barely comprehend the existence of those on the other. This is the reality of wealth in the 41st millennium, where the concentration of resources at the top has reached levels that make historical examples of inequality seem modest by comparison. The richest in Warhammer 40K do not merely live well, they exist in a sphere of privilege so elevated that it becomes a different plane of existence entirely, accessible only to those born into it or who have clawed their way to the top through exceptional ability, ruthlessness, or fortune. Conclusion. In the grim darkness of the far future, wealth has transcended anything we might recognize from human history. The richest individuals and organizations in Warhammer 40K command resources that could fund civilizations, control technologies that shape the fates of billions, and live in luxury that would shame the greatest emperors of ancient terror. From rogue traders exploring the void in kilometer-long palaces to planetary governors ruling billions from spires that pierce the clouds, from navigator houses whose bloodlines are more valuable than worlds to the high lords of terror who shape galactic policy, the ultra-wealthy of the Imperium exist in a reality divorced from the grinding poverty that defines life for most of humanity. Their wealth is not just about personal comfort, though they certainly enjoy luxuries beyond imagining. It represents power in its most concentrated form, the ability to shape the course of human history through their decisions and actions. It demonstrates the fundamental truth of the Imperium, that resources and authority have concentrated at the top to such a degree that the gap between the rulers and the ruled has become an unbridgeable chasm, a divide so vast that those on different sides can barely conceive of each other's existence. This is what the richest in Warhammer 40K live like, in opulence built upon the suffering of countless billions, in privilege maintained by systems designed to concentrate power ever upward, in isolation from the consequences of their wealth. In the 41st millennium, the rich do not merely have more than the poor. They exist in entirely different universes, their realities so fundamentally distinct that comparison becomes meaningless. And the systems that maintain this inequality are so deeply embedded in imperial society that they will endure as long as the Imperium itself survives. If you found this exploration of the ultra-wealthy in Warhammer 40K fascinating, please subscribe to Stories of Hammer and hit that like button. We dive deep into the lore of the 41st millennium, bringing you detailed explorations of the people, places, and powers that shape this incredible universe. Your support helps us create more content like this. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But for some, that war is fought from palaces built on the bones of the less fortunate.